Hello everyone, it's Mark. I am the Sanderson collector, and it is Sunday, February 3rd, the first week of the month, so congratulations, y'all made it through January. And because it is the first week of the month, that means it is time for another informational video. This month, I will be talking about the binding and printing process for books. Before I dive into that, I just want to note that there is nothing that I know of that is scheduled to come out as far as Sanderson editions this month. There is essentially nothing on the calendar. However, Starsight, the second book in the Skyward series, now has a release date. In the United States, it is listed on Amazon as October 29th, and on Book Depository, the UK edition is listed as November 5th. I don't think that is the correct date for the UK edition because that's a Tuesday and UK books always release on a Thursday. I will post links for Starsight in the description if you want to go check them out. The US copy is not available for pre-order on Amazon yet, but you can sign up to get an email notification when it is, and I will definitely let y'all know whenever it actually is available. And so, since I don't have anything else to talk about on the calendar, let's go ahead and dive into how books are printed. A lot of the information in this video comes from a very helpful article on Tor.com that was published a little over 6 years ago now, where they walked through the steps of the process for printing a memory of light. And I will also link that article in the description as well. I highly recommend it if you want to look at some pictures of the process that I'm describing. It looks absolutely fascinating. I really hope I get to tour a book printer and binder someday because it does look super cool and I want to see all those machines in motion. So, a book starts out as a roll of paper, and the book is printed onto the paper, obviously, and it is printed in sheets that are much larger than the sheets that actually end up in a physical book, and usually it's like 2 or 3 pages wide, and they are fed through the machine and everything is printed on at once. And it is also very long, usually, 20, 50 feet or something along those lines. This is the part of the process where we had the delays that I talked about at the beginning of last month because these huge rolls of paper are just not available on the time frames that some of the printers need them. Now, once the pages of the book are printed, they are cut up and put into sections. The sections, called signatures, are 32 pages, 16 on one side and 16 on the other, which are 2 pages wide and then are folded over together to form 4 total pages in the book. Now, if you're having a little trouble envisioning this, I have a very helpful prop here. I have something very, very special. I have a set of unbound signatures, and these are the signatures for the leather-bound edition of The Hero of Ages. And here is the first signature of the book. And here is what I was describing. The pages are folded over like so, and it's one sheet of paper that forms 4 pages. Front, back, in completely different parts of the book. And basically all books are printed this way into these signatures. Some special bits like the art pages, you'll notice here, are done with smaller signatures, which only have 3 pages in them. And books are basically always printed with these 32 signature sets, which means that sometimes at the end of a book you will get several blank pages. For example, in the hardcover of Mistborn, there are 3 or 4 pages that are completely blank at the end of the book after all of the text is finished, so that they reach the end of that last signature. A lot of the time these days, these pages will be filled up with advertisements and the like. Publishers often finagle their books to fit this exact number of pages, being a multiple of 32. For example, in the Stormlight hardcovers, they specifically get them down to that multiple of 32. And, sometimes they'll stretch a margin here or shrink a margin there so that it fits exactly in those 32 and that none of the pages are wasted. Now, once each signature is printed for a book, and you can tell the different signatures apart in The Hero of Ages by where the dot is on the spine, and you get a stack of first signatures, a stack of second signatures, a stack of third signatures, and so on. And then each of these are placed into separate slots in a machine. The machine pulls out a first signature, a second signature, third signature, and so on, puts them all together, and you get a stack like this. And that is the first time that it really resembles a book. Now, there's a couple of ways that this can go wrong. A signature can miss being picked up. A signature could be in the wrong slot, because loading the signatures into the machine is usually something done by hand, and so a signature can get into the wrong slot, and so you'll end up with books that are missing sections or with sections out of order, or even occasionally, in really interesting cases, entire sections or maybe even the whole book upside down. Now I'm going to show you a misprint or two that illustrates this, and before I do, I'd like to note that if you get a misprint of a book at a bookstore, just a regular released book that is sold, you can usually take it back to the bookstore and say, hey, this is misprinted, it's missing pages, it's got extra pages, something is wrong with the book. And they will give you a new copy of the book for free. It doesn't even have to be the same bookstore you bought it at. You don't have to have your receipt. That is because they can send the book back to the publisher, who sends them a fixed copy or gives them a refund for the book because it was misprinted, and that is the publisher's fault, not the bookstore. However, if you come across any cool misprints, please let me know. I have an email. It's thesandersoncollector@gmail.com, and you can leave me a comment here. You can leave me a comment on my Facebook page, tweet at me on Twitter, and let me know that you have this cool misprint. I will likely want to buy or trade you for it. I will happily offer you a final copy of the book, whatever book it is, a hardcover or whatever, and maybe if it's something super cool, maybe give you some extra compensation for it to have you send the misprint to me, because collecting those is a lot of fun and I enjoy doing it. Now, with all those disclaimers out of the way, I am going to show you a misprinted arc of Skyward. Arcs are more likely than the finished copies of books to have misprints like this because they have less quality control, because they are shipped out faster and there's a smaller print run of them, so they don't have the same massive, very accurate machines spun up to do these. They use smaller scale machines, which can make more mistakes. And so what has happened in this one is that there are some missing pages. It goes directly from page 214 to page 247 over here. And so what has happened is a complete signature, pages 215 through 246, which is exactly 32 pages, is simply missing from the book. You'll notice that there's not like a gap in the spine where they're missing. There's not, any space for them. That's because they simply weren't there and the book got bound and printed and sent off as complete, and it was later noticed that the book was missing these pages when someone was reading through it. Now, once all the pages are put together, they'll usually have some slightly ragged edges, and because of how they are folded over, the edges from the outside of the 32 will be shorter than the edges from the middle of the 32 in a signature, and so often these pages are cut down to a line in a nice straight line, and you get books like this where it's nice and smooth all the way along. However, sometimes publishers decide not to do that and instead leave the edges ragged. Sometimes they'll even add a little bit of extra raggedness for effect. I hate this effect on my books, and thankfully there are no Sanderson books that I know of that have this effect. The effect is called deckled edges, and you can see an example here on a copy of Staked, which is a good book, but the edges are deckled. You can see how they are not smooth like on the copy of Mistborn that I just showed you. And they are called deckled edges because the original way of making paper, where pulp was poured into a flat square that was in the shape of the paper that was going to be made and then let to dry, that square or shape, rectangle, whatever it was that they poured the paper pulp into was called a deckle, and the edges were not always smooth. Sometimes they'd overlap a little bit with the edge of the deckle from the pulp and so on, and so you'd get paper as it was originally made was not perfectly smooth, and so it had to be cut down. And since these are not perfectly smooth either, the effect of having pages like this in a book is called deckled edges. Now, once the books have all the pages together, they are usually glued into a set of end papers, and they will start looking like, say, an arc where they have this set of pages at the end. They are glued here, and you can see the glue, for example, on this copy of Words of Radiance in the paperback. There are 3 little bits of extra glue right here where they put maybe a little bit too much glue in from the machine, and it shows up in the book. However, there is a fancier binding process called sewing, usually Smith sewing, where the book is actually sewn into the binding, and this has been employed, for example, in the leather-bound 10th anniversary editions. They actually take at the middle of each signature, each set of 32 pages, and sew through to the spine backing of the book, and that allows the book to open completely to any page. And if you look closely at the middle of a signature, you can sometimes see the stitching in the middle of each section, and that allows the book to lie flat and be really nice, and it doesn't put in glue in the book, which can sometimes get eaten away, and so it makes the book more durable, and it's just a nicer process, but also much more expensive, so it's only done for special editions like the 10th anniversary leather bounds. After the pages have been glued or sewn to the backing, then they are inserted to the boards, the actual binding of the book. Now, this really only happens with hardcovers, of course, because paperbacks don't have these boards, and they are glued in, usually. You can see on this copy of Words of Radiance, because the pages are so large and so heavy, that the glue actually starts to come off in some cases, and the pages start peeling away from the binding. And of course that means that the boards, this part of the book, has been printed and prepared before that. That is a separate process that I don't know much about, but yes, it is done, and then the book is glued to the boards, and then final step, the dust jacket is added. Now the dust jacket, or in the case of a paperback, just the actual binding, the actual cover of the book, is printed separately, and it is printed on a long sheet vertically, and then cut the other way, and then put onto the book and folded. And it is printed in layers, and sometimes the layers get off from each other. You can see that in this misprinted copy of The Path of Daggers that I have here, where the gold foiling on the book got off from the rest of the book. You can see like even the bottom of it here and the top of it here, so you can see how the gold foiling was on repeat in this direction and just got shifted a little bit and was not caught in quality control. And then of course embossing and raised lettering is added to the dust jackets, and once they're all done, they're put on the book, and then you have a complete book. And the books are packed into boxes, shipped off to the bookstore, and eventually make it to us. And so that's the complete process of how a book is made in this day and age. And as always, if you have any questions about the bookbinding process, go ahead and leave me a comment below. I'll try to get back to you. There are links to the articles that I pulled my information from in the description of the video, so you can also check those out. And if you want to ask about any of the books I have, or let me know about any cool misprints that you have, please just leave me a comment, send me an email, or so on. And that's all for this week. So thank you, and happy collecting.